best I've felt in years.
Volunteers
Can
do
you let
great
me know if that
things
stops
for us.
recording at any point? It shouldn't do.
We need your help, wherever you are. Think about the rhino that today is being killed. We need people from the world. We are one nation. Let's be together. Thank you.
Okay, so this is just a general promotional video for African Conservation Experience, and I'll explain what that is. Okay, so thanks for coming to this presentation. I'm going to talk all about what the trip involves. I can answer questions, and I'm going to give you information about what the costs are and how to sign up. I'm recording it so that you can watch back later or share it with anybody else, like your parents. Okay, so it's a trip to South Africa. It is exclusively for grade 11 students at ISA. I know in the video you saw, all different people. A lot of the projects that African Conservation Experience works with take individual people. So if you don't go on this trip, you can also go with African Conservation Experience on your own at another time, or with your family. But this is really just for ISA grade 11. The last day of school for you is going to be the 18th of June, so we'll leave the following day, flying to South Africa, and then we land back at Schiphol on the 30th of June 2025. So it's an educational service learning trip where students will work alongside conservationists to experience firsthand how African wildlife is being protected in one of the world's most important national parks, the Kruger National Park. Has anybody heard of the Kruger Park? Yeah? Okay. So, African Conservation Experience. So this is officially not an ISA trip, okay? It's been going for many years now. I think our first trip was in 2015 or something. Since COVID, and I think it works better like this, it's been decided that so the African Conservation Experience can promote the trip and run the trip, but it is not from the school. The school has no responsibility for the trip. Now, African Conservation Experience is an organisation run by myself and my wife. It was founded in 1999, so it's been going for 25 years now, and it was founded by my father. And it came about because when I finished my high school in the UK, I wanted to go and spend time volunteering, preferably in the Kruger Park in South Africa. At the time, doing that sort of thing was really unheard of. People didn't really take gap years or go and volunteer in places like that. My family's from South Africa originally, and so through connections we organised that I spent 2 months working with a management team of the Kruger Park, which was an amazing experience. At that time it was, a lot of people were saying to my father and to me, well, can you organise it for me? He had, the job that he'd been doing had finished, so he was looking to start something new, and he wanted to do something that he was really passionate about. So he and I actually spent a few weeks, visiting different game reserves in South Africa, Botswana, Namibia. At the time, Zimbabwe. We don't work much with Zimbabwe anymore. In order to set up these sort of connections for people to go and do volunteer placements there. Anyway, things have grown a lot since then. We work a lot with school, college, and university groups. And since the last 10 years, my wife and I have taken over, so we run the whole of the African Conservation Experience now, but we have a team of about 14 people based in the UK and also in South Africa, and I obviously, I'm a teacher here, so I only do it part-time. I'm responsible for the finances and compliance and insurance and the fairly boring stuff. She's the general manager. She manages all the staff and the overall experiences. Okay, so the important thing, we were the first organisation of our kind to organise conservation travel to Southern Africa. African conservation, so I'm talking now, not as Dr. Harris, the biology teacher, I'm talking now as representative of African Conservation Experience. So when I say we, that's what I'm referring to. Okay, so we have membership of ABTA, which is the Association of British Travel Agents. It's a very difficult accreditation to get. It shows that we uphold very high standards in terms of health and safety, how we treat people's money, so in terms of when we take deposits, making sure that that is protected in case we're unable to provide the trip, then you're guaranteed your money back, things like that. A lot of the conservation projects, we don't own the conservation projects, they're owned by the people that run the project, but we've helped them get started. So we normally give them interest-free loans, we advise them on how to set up the project and how to use volunteers and school groups and that in order to provide the work and the funding to run the project. So the majority of the cost of the trip is going directly to the conservation project, and these projects only run through the funding that they get by people going and traveling there. We've got really strong ethical and moral foundations. At the moment we're in a working group that's trying to improve the ethics of travel and how people interact with animals when they travel and providing guidelines. South Africa has its own standards which we've been involved with, and we're trying to sort of lead the way in getting other travel organizations to follow these certain standards. So things like, you know, only contact with animals if it's of benefit to the animal, that sort of thing. Okay, so that's a bit of information about the organization. Okay, so where are we going to? We'll be flying into, so Pretoria is the capital of South Africa, the government capital. Johannesburg is a much bigger city. It's located just here. It's not shown at this level on Google Maps because it's not the capital, but we'll fly into Johannesburg. And then on the day that we arrive, we will get a bus up to here. This is the Kruger National Park here. The buses that we travel on are the same quality of what you'd expect in the Netherlands. There are a lot of sort of low quality buses that we could use, but we make sure that all the transport that we have, and we'll talk about it later, the medical care as well, is pretty much of the standard that you would expect here. Okay, so we're going to go to a camp in the Kruger Park. It's a private area, so it's not in the public part or the tourist area where you can go as a tourist. So you probably, when you're there, you're not going to see, you might see a few, but you're not going to see other tourists and things. We're going to have the camp all to ourselves, just, you know, for us as a group. This is kind of a main living area. You can see there's a kitchen space where food is prepared. There's a solar panel that connects to all these devices that are charging there. There's an eating area under the tent and outside there. The accommodation is in tents like this that you share. It's a single gender, and it's a safari tent that you can stand up inside. There is a little swimming pool there, although the time that we'll be going is going to be the winter there, which means, I mean, it'll still be in the mid to high 20s in the middle of the day, but at night it does cool down a lot. What we do find though is there are elephants that come and drink the water out of the pool, so a lot of the time it's left to the elephants. So I should also mention, for example, around this camp, in the last few weeks, there's now a den of African wild dogs. I don't know if you know what those are, but really, really rare. I've hardly ever seen them myself, and I've spent months in places like this. There's a den of them living near the camp. You might see them around. There's hyenas. You often see elephants walking around. There's no fencing or anything around the camp. But they tend not to come into the camp because they are afraid of humans. So you can see it's a proper bed. It gets cold at night, so you know we'll talk about it near the time, but it's good to bring a sleeping bag, and then normally you sleep in a sleeping bag under the duvet because it is cold at night, but then as soon as the sun comes up it gets pretty hot. Kind of the basis of each day, one time each day, we're going to go out on a drive where we're going to drive a certain route and collect data. So we'll see many different animals and we collect data on, you know, what species is it males or females, how many of them, what are they doing, and any sort of interesting things like that. We make a database that, if you want to, you can then use for your IAs or extended essays. So you will see lions, you'll see elephants, so we collect data using GPS locations like this. Here are some examples of research questions that people have used in the past for biology IAs or ESS. So for example, do elephants strip the bark from different species of tree to different extents? How does the density of vegetation affect the distribution of predators, grazers and browsers in the Kruger Park? For example, ESS, how do different people perceive the importance of wildlife conservation in South Africa? What are the roles of animal rehabilitation centres in wildlife conservation? So if you were interested, then you could talk to your teacher, your ESS biology teacher, to see, well, can you use this trip and data you collect on it for your research projects next year. One thing that is quite unique is you'll spend time walking on foot. This is a big 5 area, so there are lions and elephants, buffalo, rhinos around, but you go with trained guides. The guides are all local. They have to have a very high level of qualification in order to be able to take people on foot. In 25 years, we've never had any issues related to danger from animals. There have been incidents and people have got injured, but it's more things like somebody spraining an ankle as they get out of a vehicle. We've never had any incidents relating to wild animals. So for example, this is the carcass of, I think, a buffalo that had been eaten by lions. And then so the project coordinator here is explaining, like looking at the area, how would this have occurred, how long ago, and what information can we get from it. When you see elephants, it's definitely not like seeing them in a zoo. Sometimes you might see groups of 20, 50, even 100 of them. You see all different ages, from the old matriarchs to lots of young calves. The landscapes are really impressive. It's amazing when you're out on foot walking through these places. This is not like a Duke of Edinburgh expedition. You're not going to be doing long walks. It's literally, you might go out and walk a few kilometers. You do it really slowly so that you don't miss anything around you. When you're on foot, you tend to see less of the big animals because they're afraid of humans on foot. They're not afraid of humans in vehicles because they don't associate them as being humans. But when you're on foot, you see a lot of the smaller animals and insects and birds, which you might miss if you're in a vehicle. It's one of my favorite things to do, is to walk on foot in these areas. We'll set up camera traps. This is a little camera with a sensor on it, and when animals walk through at night, then it'll take a photo of them. So we also use that and add it to data to see what animals are in the area. These are just more photos that have been taken by students on previous trips. As well as staying at that base in the Kruger Park, you're going to leave a few times to go and do some excursions to see other parts. Mahola Hola is another project that African Conservation Experience work with. They're probably the biggest animal rehabilitation centre in Africa. And you'll spend a day there, get a behind the scenes tour on what they do, seeing what animals come in. So you're going to spend 9 days at that camp in the Kruger Park. After that, we drive back to Johannesburg, and we spend an afternoon just seeing parts of Johannesburg, because it would be a shame, although the trip is mainly sort of wildlife conservation and environment focused, it would be a shame to go to South Africa and not see Johannesburg, which is an incredible city. So we'll see areas like government buildings, modern and old government buildings. We'll go to markets. You'll go to areas. This is an old apartheid prison. A lot of people I've known now, a lot of my students now don't necessarily know the political history of South Africa and apartheid, which is the time when laws for white and non-white people were different. And anyway, you'll learn all about what that means and how that affects South Africa in the modern day. Johannesburg is known to be a dangerous and a violent city, but that is generally in certain areas. We know where those areas are, and we will not go anywhere near areas that would be dangerous to go to. Any areas we go to within the city are fairly standard and very safe tourist destinations. So African Conservation Experience work with a whole bunch of schools, colleges and universities. That's just to show that. You don't have to read all of this. This is just in terms of health, safety and support. So the important thing is the camp that we're going to is 30 minutes away from Hoedspruit, which is a town where there are doctors, kind of like a house arts or a GP, that they can deal with most emergencies. So it's normally things like, you know, somebody getting a cut, a sprained ankle, something like, you know, those are the most common types of incidents that we have. If it were to be more serious and you need to go to a hospital, the camp is an hour and 45 minutes drive from Sanin Mediclinic, which is a private Mediclinic. In order to go on the trip, you will have, which you should have anyway, your Dutch health insurance. Now, your Dutch health insurance covers you, you know, when you travel abroad. I think apart from in the USA, you have to pay extra or something if you go there. But anyway, your Dutch health insurance will cover you in the case of emergencies in South Africa. And it will cover the kind of level of care that you would get in the Netherlands. So it would be at that Mediclinic. To be honest, the biggest risk, although it isn't a big risk, but the biggest risk is the roads, driving from one place to another, and there being an accident. But as I said earlier, the vehicles that we use are a really high standard, and all the drivers have a public driver's qualification, which means that they're qualified to drive groups like this around. All the coordinators we have at the projects are highly trained in first aid, and so African Conservation Experience risk assesses all the projects, the accommodation, the activities, the transfers, and every part of the trip. African Conservation Experience, it's a UK-based provider. So as well as the fact we're a member of ABTA, there are certain standards that mean that if you're a travel operator based in the UK, there are certain laws, standards that you have to fulfill. That would be very different if you were running the trip yourself. Okay, and as I said earlier, that mainly relates to health and safety and sort of customer service and kind of protecting people's money. So let's say, for example, you go out on the trip, you're in South Africa, a pandemic is declared, and you need to get back. So first of all, African Conservation Experience has a legal responsibility to help you get back to Amsterdam. And if you are, if for example, and this is just African Conservation Experience is financially unable to do that, there's financial protection in place that guarantees that you will be, you know, to buy flights or whatever you need to get back to the Netherlands. It's kind of technical stuff that we've never had to use, but just so you know, you've got that sort of level of support. Okay, so in terms of the technicalities, so at the moment there's kind of two costs for the trip. There is, if we decide to fly directly with KLM, the total cost will be €4,100. If we fly via Nairobi with Kenyan Airlines, then it's 3,400. We know a lot of schools and colleges that travel with African Conservation Experience go with Kenyan Airlines, and they find it really good. It is cheaper, you're flying indirect, but we can make a decision a bit later to decide which of those two we would go. But I would say if you're signing up now, then I would say don't sign up on the condition that it will be the cheaper amount or that you're going to fly direct. I'd say sign up if you're happy for either of those. It is an all-inclusive price. So it covers, it's an 11-night itinerary, so 9 nights in the Kruger Park plus overnight flights each way. It includes all the return flights, all the transport within South Africa, all the meals and accommodation. We can accommodate various dietary requirements, all the logistical support before and after, and the 24-hour emergency support in South Africa. So when we get there, we'll be met by African Conservation Experience's team based in South Africa. That is not the same as the conservationists that are running the project. So let's say that there was an issue, and there's, you know, so we're at this project in the Kruger Park, and somebody needs to go somewhere to the hospital or something. African Conservation Experience's team is there to help with all of that. Okay, so it's a team on the ground that are not involved in the daily running of the project. They're there just to kind of make sure that everything runs smoothly. Okay, if you're interested in signing up, you can, if you scan this, it takes you to a. It takes you to this. I know a few people have already signed up already. I've simplified the form. The original form had required your passport details and things which we don't need yet. So this can either be filled in by you students or by parents. It just requires a parent's name, student's email address, a parent's email address, and you as a student's name. The official sign up to kind of like, yes, confirm I'm definitely interested in this trip, is a payment of a deposit. It gives you the details there. Okay, so this is, if you go scan that QR code, it will take you to here. These are the bank details. Once you pay the deposit, then you've secured your place on the trip. There's a possibility of up to 18 students can go on the trip, plus there will be 2 chaperones who will be staff from ISA. They won't be going representing ISA, because remember it's not an ISA trip, but they'll be going representing African Conservation Experience. But they'll be people that you know, probably from ISA. Okay, so it's the payment of that deposit. What we do is once we've got all the deposits in, we check, you know, are the flights good? Everybody's still happy with it? Then we get a final confirmation, and then we go ahead, we book the flights, and from that point, the deposits are not refundable. We're saying we need to sign up really by the last week before the Christmas vacation. So please do, you can sign up on the form, and then I know that you're interested, but it's the payment of the deposit that really secures your place on the trip. Right. Does anybody have any questions?
What happens if more than 18 people sign up?
Yeah, so we will then, we'll probably base it on a first come, first served basis then. Most of the time, we have between 15 and 18 people sign up. We've never had to turn anybody away so far. Yeah.
Is there any vaccination needed?
Yeah, okay, so there's no vaccines required to enter South Africa. But what one of the things we'll talk about for those that are interested in is we do recommend that you visit, like there's the KLM travel clinic to get advice depending on what vaccines you've already had. Mm-hmm. But normally it'll be the same vaccines as you would need to have anyway in the Netherlands, okay. Like tetanus, tuberculosis and things like that.
So you don't need to worry about malaria or...
Okay, so this is what we've had in the past. So again, if you visit the travel clinic, the advice is mixed. Some people are advised to take malaria medication, other people are advised not to take malaria medication. I personally, when I go, I don't take malaria medication at this location at this time of the year, because we're going to be there in the dry season. So there's very little water around. I don't think I've ever seen a mosquito at that time of the year. If I was going in the wet season, which would be more like the European Christmas time, then I would take malaria medication. But again, so me representing African Conservation Experience or the school cannot advise either way. It needs to be a medical professional. But in the end, I guess it's your decision whether to take it or not. We've had students who've been advised to take malaria medication, and when they've been there, they've stopped taking it because they didn't feel well from it, and they saw there were no mosquitoes there. Any other questions?
Also with the 24-hour emergency support.
Yeah.
So you guys obviously are on kind of cool for emergency support, but when they go to the clinic, is the clinic 24 hours as well?
Yes, the one in Zanin is.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, and also the so the one in Hoedspruit is not. That's more of a sort of house arts clinic, and then the one in Zanin is a full large medical clinic.
So like an A&E style.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, of course, it's where we're going. It's a big tourist destination. There's tourists coming from all around the world, so it's set up for tourists coming from Europe, North America, China, and that. Yeah.
I assume they are going to be engaged throughout the day with the activities that the center is doing around the animals. What is there any activity planned for afterwards, in the afternoon, in the evening? Like, if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So a typical day, you get up quite early in the morning, more about say 6 o'clock. Have a quick breakfast, and then and then you go out. But to be honest, okay, so it sounds early, but wait. So you normally go out for a few hours, either walking or in a vehicle, or if you're going to, for example, the Animal Rehabilitation Centre, you'll go out for a few hours until maybe 11 o'clock. Then you come back to the camp for an extended-ish period, like maybe 3 hours or something. You have lunch, because the middle of the day can be quite hot. And then normally in the afternoon at maybe 3 o'clock, you go back out again, do whatever work you're doing. So it's things like, the walks, you might work with, do work with the anti-poaching unit. Other things that I haven't mentioned is we work with a local community centre with a school. So we'll spend an afternoon doing work there, the rehabilitation centre and that. And then we come back normally at about, say, 6 in the evening, and then it's getting dark. We eat. And then it suddenly gets very dark, starts getting cold. You're normally sitting around a fire talking and that, but by about 8 or 9 o'clock, people are going to bed, because there's not, we recommend you bring games. So there is very limited access to the internet in any way. So it's not that people can sit around gaming or anything like that. So we recommend bring card games, board games, things like that. And then so we normally go to bed quite early when it gets 8 or 9 in the evening, but then as it gets light the following morning, people get up. So getting up at 6 o'clock is not that early. You get into this very natural rhythm where you go to bed when it's dark and then you wake up when it's light the following morning. And other things that we do is we have talks. So for example, the ranger of that section of the Kruger comes and gives a talk about what it's like to manage that area. You get talks from people at the rehabilitation centre, from the anti-poaching unit. Those are the main three. We'll also do debates. So talking about, things like, does trophy hunting have a role in providing income for wildlife conservation? Or should it just be ecotourism, things like that? And those talks are often done in the evening or in that sort of 3 or 4 hour block in the middle of the day. Yes?
What's the bathroom situation?
The what?
Bathroom situation.
Oh yeah. So in that tent I showed you, at the back is a toilet. It's a sit-down toilet that you sit on, and it has a chemical disposal system in it. And it is private, so you're. So you'll be sharing. So girls share with girls, boys with boys. So you'll be sharing with another person, but obviously in that area, that toilet area is private. There's also a shower there, which is also private, but it is open above, so you can see the sky above you.
How many people are per tent?
2.
Okay.
Yeah. If there's an odd number of people, then normally one person doesn't want to go on their own, because at night you hear animals moving around. So normally then we say, okay, 3 people can share one tent. Any other questions? Okay, so like I said, so in order to sign up, you can scan this, fill in the form. The email that I sent out yesterday has has a link in it as well. Once we've got the instructions for paying the deposit are in there as well. If you sign up now and you don't pay a deposit, then probably in a few weeks I'll say thanks for signing up. If you're interested, you do need to pay the deposit. So I would say even if you're unsure, sign up now, because otherwise I'm not going to get in contact with you again about it. There's not going to be any more mail outs or communications unless you sign up. Okay. Right, I'm going to stay here if anybody has any questions that they want to ask me one-to-one. Otherwise, I hope to see a lot of you on the trip. Thanks.
Thank you.